In today's Locked On Pelicans, we have a big update on Zion Williamson's injury status. I'll tell you when he's likely to play again, plus 2 trades that involve Jimmy Butler. It's the Tuesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Tuesday, a game day for your New Orleans Pelicans, taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves inside the Smoothie King Center. We have an attendance update with that for y'all that I will let you know in a little bit here. But the bigger news is an update on Zion Williamson and his injury status. When is he going to play? We're going to talk about it in today's episode. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans because things are about to get real important here in New Orleans. So let's start with that because the biggest news is on the Pelicans official injury report. Zion Williamson is listed as questionable here. Willie Green said after yesterday's practice that he played 5-on-5, went through a full practice, upgraded from out to questionable. Questionable, I think, is supposed to mean about 50-50 shot of playing, kind of a game time decision here. Usually what this means or what it's meant in the past is Zion Williamson will give it a go. He'll go through a warm-up before the game in some capacity, and if he's feeling good enough, if the doctors say so, he will end up playing. If not, they'll hold him out. Whenever he ends up playing, he's likely going to be on a 20-minute per game minutes restriction is what my understanding would be with this, similar to what Jose Alvarado is kind of going with right now. So we are going to see Zion Williamson very, very soon. And that's really encouraging. We want to see him out there on the court. One, it's just fun watching Zion Williamson play basketball. Simple as that. But now it's also time to figure out, is he the guy that you are going to build around? And everyone I've talked to, and Will Guillory tweeted this out the other day too, that everyone I've talked to is like, he looks great. They always say this for the record. There's never really been a time it's like, he doesn't look that good. We'll see it on the court. We're going to kind of know the shape he's in. We're going to know everything right now and how he handled that sort of recovery. And look, looking at the kind of timeline here of him playing potentially the second week of January, that fits in what I'd been told. That fits into kind of the messaging that the Pelicans were putting out. So I don't think he's behind on anything. I think he was just doing the work. It's not hard to come back from these necessarily. Jose Alvarado was over 6 weeks as well with this. We're kind of in that time frame where he should be back. He is, and this is not like that hamstring from a couple of years ago that kept him out the remainder of the regular season. That in and of itself is a little bit encouraging. A little bit, not fully. We'd rather he didn't have the injury in the first place. But at least he's coming back and hopefully going to be looking really good. So the way this has gone in the past is when he's usually listed as questionable, it's like he'll give it a go before the game. He ends up not playing. And given that the Pelicans are on a back-to-back right now, look, I'm not claiming any inside information or anything on this. I don't know if he's going to end up playing in this one. I lean more towards he doesn't play tonight against the Timberwolves. With the Pelicans on a back-to-back, you imagine he wouldn't play in a back-to-back in both those games. They're going to be a little bit cautious with him. So if he's going to play in one of these, do you want him going up against Rudy Gobert and the Minnesota Timberwolves or going up against DeAndre Ayton and the Portland Trailblazers? My answer would be the Trailblazers. That's the weaker team. That's the game you're more likely to win. Save him for that game. Make sure that you get that win. And I think that's likely what will end up happening. He might be in better shape than we realize. So they'll play him tonight, and maybe they play him on Wednesday as well. But I lean towards we'll see him much more likely in the game against the Portland Trail Blazers. But he could end up going tonight in this game. It wouldn't surprise me fully. I wouldn't be like, wow, didn't expect that at all. I mean, he's listed as questionable. But usually earlier in the season when he was listed as questionable, he tried to give it a go, and then it was like, yeah, no, he's not going to play tonight. So I think that might be what we end up seeing here in this game, meaning he'll just end up playing on Wednesday. But it seems like it's going to be one of these two games. If not, it'll most likely then be Friday, their next game against the Philadelphia 76ers. And what's kind of funny about that one is if that's when he does make his return, don't forget it was a game against the Sixers on New Year's Day? That a couple of years ago that he ended up hurting his hamstring and then missing the remainder of the regular season. But right now he's looking like he's going to be back. And we'll talk about this later in the week after we recap these two games. This becomes arguably the most important time New Orleans has ever had with Zion Williamson on the roster. And I will explain why. I've kind of explained it why. If you're an everyday, you kind of already know the argument here. But I'll explain why even more in depth. And maybe with Will Guillory. We'll see if we can get him on. Coming up in a future show here on Locked On Pelicans. So a couple of other notes for the game tonight. Trey Murphy with a left ankle sprain is out. He did not practice. We want to see him and Zion and everyone out there together. It's definitely not going to be this game. Maybe in the future, we'll see. He's kind of basically Trey's day-to-day here is what they're going to end up ruling him as. DeJounte Murray is also listed as questionable. He was listed questionable for that Wizards game. He ended up playing. So I think he'll probably be good to go here. But it's a back-to-back set against the Timberwolves and then the Trailblazers. Something that is worth mentioning here, if you're going to the game, there's a new traffic plan for the Pelicans games at the Smoothie King Center, basically during the Super Bowl period. Right now, there's no parking underneath the Superdome. There's kind of just like a little bit of like a no-fly zone, no go anywhere zone around the Superdome in general in the lead up to this, the big event here. So from Pelicans, this is going to affect Pelicans home games from January 7th to February 13th. So I think it's 10 games here where you're going to need to park in different areas. The Pelicans are, to their credit, giving you the full amount of parking fees and refunding those if you already have a parking pass, but it's going to end up impacting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games here. So if you park in premium ticket holders, will park in Garage 1. All other parking passes, Garage 1, 2, 5, and 6 are redirected to the Champions Garage, which is accessible via Loyola Avenue and Girard Street. They're going to have traffic people around kind of pointing you in all directions for it. What they have said, which is what I kind of like here, is that they will have more security out there, more lighting and things just to make people feel a little bit safer with that walk, but that's a very safe walk at that point in time. So if you're going down there and you normally park underneath the Superdome, you're probably not doing that right now. So get there a little bit earlier because I have a feeling the traffic's going to be a bit of a mess when it comes to that sort of thing. So hopefully they will make that a little bit easier, but that's definitely going to be a pain point going forward when it comes to all this for the next month and a half. There's a lot of Pelicans games this month, so it's like very unfortunate, but kind of how it goes when you are hosting the Super Bowl. So that's the update on Zion Williamson. I'm encouraged by that. I'm excited to see him on the court and just let's get a clear vision of what this Pelicans team is or isn't going forward. But say you want to really mix it up right now. I've got two trades for you involving Jimmy Butler, who wants out, and the Miami Heat, who are going to trade him. Let's look at the Pelicans as a facilitator, a third or fourth team in a trade for Jimmy Butler. And then in the third segment, the deal that brings Jimmy Butler to New Orleans, that would be a huge risk, and I'll explain why, and it's a little crazy. Fake trades coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Right now, the Pelicans are 5.5-point underdogs, plus 5.5 against the Timberwolves here. Might change when Zion Williamson comes out there. So if you want to get in on this line, it might be better to do it now because if Zion plays, that number is going to shrink a little bit. So you can get the best of both worlds if you make that bet right now. All you need is $5 and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans, 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast for a reason here. And go subscribe to the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter over at LockedOnDaily.com. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. So let's get into fake trade season. I don't need to recap the Jimmy Butler Miami Heat drama saga, whatever it is you want to do. But boy, did he have a quote the other day where saying he was not having joy playing basketball and he wants to get that joy back. And someone asked him, can you get that joy back playing for the Miami Heat? And Jimmy Butler said, probably not. And that basically meant, okay, we got to trade him now. They suspended him 7 games. They said they are going to try and trade him. There you go. So he's heavily on the trade block. Does he make the most sense in New Orleans? Yes and no. We'll look at that next, but I want to give you a much more realistic trade that I think kind of clears all around here. And it's a 4-team deal. So even if the Pelicans aren't interested in trading for Jimmy Butler, can you go out and help make a deal happen or give up a key piece in it and getting things that you need or accomplishing what you need to accomplish as a team right now? And I have a deal that maybe does that. So let's go through the core pieces here. The Miami Heat trade Jimmy Butler to the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings trade DeMar DeRozan and Orlando Robinson to the Detroit Pistons. They also trade Kevin Huerter to the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pistons are trading Isaiah Stewart and Simone Fontecchio to New Orleans here. And the Pelicans are trading Brandon Ingram to the Miami Heat. So the crux of this deal is this. Jimmy Butler to the Kings. From the Kings, you move DeMar DeRozan to the Pistons. Pistons give up basically just salary pieces in Isaiah Stewart, Simone Fontecchio. Pelicans also get Kevin Huerter to make the money work. And they get DeMar DeRozan to help them with their playoff play. Well, I'm running through this a bad way. Here's what it is. Kings get Jimmy Butler. Heat get Brandon Ingram. The Pistons get Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, Daniel Tice, DeMar DeRozan, and Orlando Robinson. And the Pelicans get Isaiah Stewart, Simone Fontecchio, and Kevin Huerter. That's your trade. There are some picks that would need to move around a little bit here. I don't think the Pistons need to give anything up in this deal. We're using their cap space, but they're also getting DeMar DeRozan to kind of bolster their playoff chances. But I think the Heat need to send one out to the New Orleans Pelicans. And I think maybe the Kings also need to send out some sort of pick to Detroit and New Orleans as well. So basically what you're doing is you're trading Brandon Ingram and you're getting Isaiah Stewart, Simone Fontecchio, Kevin Huerter, and some draft compensation. Isaiah Stewart on a $15 million per year deal for the next couple of years. Simone Fontecchio is making 7.6 this year. He's making 8.3 next year. Kevin Huerter is making 16.8 this year, 18 million next year. This shaves about 0.8 million off of the Pelicans' luxury tax. So they need to make one deal to duck under the luxury tax then. And you just get a bunch of tradable contracts that you can trade this season or next season. That's not the ideal return for Brandon Ingram whatsoever, but the ideal return for Brandon Ingram ain't happening at this point in time in terms of just equal talent or things like that. This is a deal that is going to put the Pelicans in a better financial position long term. And that's unsexy and unfun. I don't like talking about saving salary or trying to fix your books in your cap sheet for upcoming years, but it's the realities of the situation here. And New Orleans needs to do that. You know, I was trying to figure out how you could do a Brandon Ingram straight up for Jimmy Butler deal. Brandon Ingram and another player for Jimmy Butler. And you know, the only player that works with on New Orleans is Herb Jones. And under no circumstances am I trading Brandon Ingram and Herb Jones for Jimmy Butler. That's the only guy making like $15 million per year. You need those type of salaries to get deals done. Well, here you get two of them in Isaiah Stewart and Kevin Huerter. And then you get Fontecchio, who at least is a tradable salary too. You could aggregate him with a guy like Jose Alvarado, God forbid, but you could do it and it would work. And so I don't hate the idea of it. Just get pieces that are more movable that can lead to your next deal. This is basically the trade before the trade. And if you can get some picks for it, that part's pretty cool too, in my opinion. So there you go. You get Isaiah Stewart that can come off the bench, can play some minutes for you. The other thing that this deal does is it does free up a roster spot for New Orleans, I believe. 1, 2, 3, and they're bringing 3 guys back. So no, they don't. But I'm trying to remember if I did this right as I'm looking at the trade. Correct. So it doesn't, but you can then easily dump a guy and then sign someone like Brandon Boston Jr., who they want to sign to a long-term deal and get him on this roster. So it puts you in a better position to be able to make that move too by shaving that $0.8 million off of the salary cap. Look, the Kings need to do something, right? They tried firing Mike Brown. They've been winning a couple of games here, but that could just be the interim coach boost that you often get. But if they want to make a real big move, we've seen that DeMar DeRozan doesn't really fit. Roll the dice on Jimmy Butler. See what you got there with him. And for the Pistons, they just won. They're 500. They're fighting for a playoff spot. Not just a play-in spot, but a playoff spot. They just lost Jaden Ivey, who's been good. In this deal, they add DeMar DeRozan, but they don't really lose anyone of significant value to them. They're basically adding DeMar DeRozan almost for free in a sense in a deal like this. It feels like that's something that they would not mind doing. And they're using their cap space to help facilitate this and maybe getting some sort of pick out of it. DeMar DeRozan and a pick sounds really good for them here. So that's the situation that they kind of find themselves in. For Miami, this just kind of rids them of the Jimmy Butler problem, gives them Brandon Ingram, and they can choose to sign him or not. And you would imagine that they would, and you would imagine that Brandon Ingram would sign a long-term deal in Miami. So this kind of fixes it for everyone, even if in a weird way, it's a little bit of an underwhelming return for the New Orleans Pelicans, but one that they can use for other things. All of those guys, Isaiah Stewart, Simone Fontecchio, and Kevin Huerter, are all going to get minutes for the New Orleans Pelicans. It adds a lot of that depth that has been missing from this team. You wouldn't get Javonte Green minutes then, who hasn't been playing particularly well, or maybe some of those other minutes from guys like Jeremiah Robinson-Earl when you now have a much more solid backup in Isaiah Stewart, even if Daniel Tice has actually been playing relatively well for the New Orleans Pelicans. So that's the trade. Basically, you're sending out Brandon Ingram. You're getting Isaiah Stewart, Fontecchio, Kevin Huerter, and some draft compensation. You could remove Jeremiah Robinson-Earl or Daniel Tice and add in another minimum deal from New Orleans. You could trade Javonte Green in this one. Those are all, when I come up with trades, the way I describe it, it's funny because I was talking to our Pistons host about this about a week or so ago, is I don't worry about the little things. The core concept of this trade, right, is Jimmy Butler, Brandon Ingram, and DeMar DeRozan. Figure that stuff out, then you can build off of that, and everything else is just details, right? But the core pieces we've got in place. So things might be a little bit different, but this is the trade that I'm kind of putting out there right now that I could see making sense for all teams involved. Do you like it? Do you hate it? You might hate it. I don't particularly love it. I just don't have another Brandon Ingram trade that I think is going to come to fruition, at least right now. So if you've got to move him, get these type of salaries that you can then move later that also do something for your team. Let me know what you think. If you want to roast me on the trade, that's cool. You're going to hate me more on the next one. That's coming up here next in today's episode. That's how we get Jimmy Butler on the Pelicans. There's a logic behind it, I promise, but there is also a massive, massive risk, and actually multiple massive risks. I'll go over them. Let's talk about it. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get real money action while watching your favorite NBA stars than with Prize Picks. So whether you're a diehard fan or just love some friendly competition, Prize Picks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. So here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. You think CJ McCollum is going to go for more than 22 points? Maybe LeBron James is going to drop 30. Prize Picks lets you make your predictions and put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. Prize Picks is just fun, right? You can pick guys like Jason Tatum to go for more than 25 points. Anthony Edwards, hopefully not going for more than 25 here. And with Prize Picks flex play option, even if one of your picks doesn't hit, you can still double your money. And once you hit, you can get your money fast, sometimes as quick as 15 minutes. And it's honestly the best way to keep the game exciting. So now is the perfect time to join. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. No need to win. Get the bonus. It's guaranteed $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup after you download the Prize Pick app and just use promo code LOCKEDONNBA. Prize Picks, run your game. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday, and you're going to want to become an everydayer because we've got a whole lot to talk about with Zion Williamson returning. I am excited. I hope you are excited too. And for your second listen, Ross Jackson making sense of all of the coaching news for the Saints. Requesting a lot of interviews, some conflicting reports out there too. Ross Jackson's rounding it all up over the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go make them your second listen today. So let's get into a weirder situation. Do you want let me ask you this, just straight up. Do you want Jimmy Butler on the team? Even if it's for part of a season. I don't know. So when it comes to Jimmy Butler, the answer to should you want him on the team, honestly, probably should be a no. Like it really should. Just objectively speaking, in my opinion, you don't want Jimmy Butler on the team. If you look at it, look at where he's been, who he's played for. Has it ever ended well with Jimmy Butler? Will it ever end well with Jimmy Butler? And the answer is no. Just never has quietly moved on to another team. It's always some big blow up, force his way out, things get ugly, all of that. So do you want to deal with that? Does any team want to deal with that? The answer to that should be no. Doesn't mean you won't. Doesn't mean someone won't convince themselves, right? It's like the Arrested Development meme of does that ever work? No, but people always kind of convince themselves that it might, but it might just work for us. That's kind of what you're doing here if you trade for Jimmy Butler. Talented player, but injury prone. Older, he's 35. That's definitely not someone you want. He wants max money. New Orleans doesn't want to give max money to even Brandon Ingram, who's significantly younger. And then Jimmy Butler just creates headaches in some capacity here. That's not a great situation for this team to be in. He'll be 36 next year. Not what you want whatsoever. So what do you do? Maybe you still do it though. This is someone, if you want to light a fire under Zion Williamson, under potentially Brandon Ingram or whoever is on the team, Jimmy Butler might be the dude that can do it. There's no denying when he is actually wanting to play that he is about as dialed in and as hardcore of a player that exists out there. And he gives it on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. When he is good, he is a really, really special player, and I really mean that. He is that good, in my opinion, when he's locked in. Would he be here? I have no clue. No clue if that would end up being the case. But here's the thing. If you trade for Jimmy Butler, you're not really trading for Jimmy Butler. You're trading for Jimmy Butler and his contract. And that is this season, and that's what makes it so tough, $48.8 million. He's a player option next season for $52.4 million. Keep that number, that 52.4 in mind for a moment. You're trading for his salary and basically just assuming that he will opt out of that player option. And then you just get $50 million off your books or something like that. The Pelicans have a bit of a cap problem. They need to sort that out, as unfun as that is. And this is a guy that, if you view him as a big expiring contract, you trade for him and cool, whatever. So there you go. That's the deal. That's the rationale behind trading for Jimmy Butler. But what's the trade? You're not going to like it. I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to like it. and there's big risks involved. The trade basically is this. It's Jimmy Butler and Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson is making a little over $18 million this year. He's basically making $20 million next year for Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. And CJ's recent hot streak maybe makes this look even worse, but I already came up with this deal beforehand. 2 players. You have to include a guy like Pele Larson, basically a minimum contract guy on the Miami Heat to make this work as well. But again, minor details when it comes to it. I would also require Miami to include a first-round pick in this trade. Like, absolutely. I don't know if they want to do it. That's probably where this would break down, but I would demand that sort of thing. I don't think Duncan Robinson is a bad player, but he's not good. And at $20 million, you got to pay me to take that on a little bit here. But it fixes the Pelicans' salary cap if Jimmy Butler opts out. So if Jimmy Butler opts out and he's not on the team next year, you're looking at your top 3 paid players being Zion Williamson at $39.4 million, DeJounte Murray at $31.5, Trey Murphy at $25 million, then Duncan Robinson call it $20 million, Herb Jones at $14 million, then Jordan Hawkins at $4.7. And, at that point, you're going to throw in the draft pick too, and whoever that ends up being. This puts the Pelicans before the draft pick. Oh, no, I have the first round pick in there. Sorry. That's $8.34 million. I think I put the 4th pick in there. That puts the Pelicans $33 million under the luxury tax. That puts them about $40 million under the first apron. They wouldn't go over that. That's all the breathing room they need. They're in the luxury tax right now as of today, and they don't want to be here. They're going to be in it next year too, if they kind of keep things as they are by even more. This avoids that problem next year, meaning you don't need to find a trade to duck under the luxury tax if that's what this team has to do. And they likely are going to try and do that next year unless we figure out that this team's really good. But given what we've seen, I don't think that's the expectation here. So this fixes their salary cap for the next couple of years. That really gives you a lot of flexibility that they do not have currently. You can flip Duncan Robinson. You can kind of do at that point whatever you want to do, and it's not a bad position to be in. Here's the big dilemma with it, though. One, what if Jimmy Butler opts in? 50, what did we say his contract was? 50-something million dollars, 52.4? That won't work. That won't work at all for New Orleans, because if he opts into that $52.4 million, if we add 50, that all of a sudden puts the Pelicans $19 million into the luxury tax and well over the first apron and almost into the second apron. That's if Jimmy Butler opts in. And he might. He's saying he won't and all of those things, but it's a similar situation to Brandon Ingram. Who's going to sign him? No one has cap space. No one wants to do this. They would have traded for him already by now if they wanted to do that. So you run into a disaster scenario that if you trade for Jimmy Butler and he opts into that $52.4 million, you are so screwed. This team is so screwed in terms of the cap if he opts in. You can't risk that. Beyond just Jimmy Butler, is not a culture builder. You might light a fire under Zion and some of those other guys for a little bit, but everyone's going to get sick of Jimmy Butler after a while because that's what happens with Jimmy Butler. So not only then are you stuck with Jimmy Butler, but your $20 million, call it, into the luxury tax, meaning you got to just dump somebody for nothing. That is not a good position for the Pelicans to be in whatsoever. So they need to sort that out. And that's kind of the situation they find themselves in. That's why I can't really find a deal where the Pelicans would actively trade for Jimmy Butler. The risk of him opting in is far too large. That would screw you're going to have to, you dump everybody. They're not going to pay $20 million in the luxury tax. So that's the situation. Of the 2 trades, which one was least worst? Is it the one where you're facilitating a deal but not getting a great return on Brandon Ingram? Or is it where you're going to take a risk on Jimmy Butler that could just backfire tremendously? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If he opts in, that is a disaster. I'd be willing to bet he might end up opting in wherever he goes because that money isn't going to be there like he thinks it is. That if he really wants to be like, Heat, trade me now, it's I'm going to opt in and you're going to have to deal with this for another year. That should scare them more than anything else. Let me know what you think. Let's see if Zion Williamson plays tonight. I'm excited for the game. I will be in there in the Smoothie King Center. Looking forward to seeing y'all. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. I'll be back with y'all tomorrow to recap the game. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.